developers and kind of promote a cultural change. Here's my contact information. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's super hard. It's at Janna Loeffler. And then my Gmail account too is also very difficult, jannaloeffler@gmail.com. So with that, I have over 15 years of experience in the software quality industry, working for a variety of companies. I've worked for large companies, medium companies. Haven't really worked with I actually have worked in small companies as well. And thinking and reflecting over my career, I centered on a few problems, probably 3 problems that I've seen with testing and quality teams. And usually what I find is that there's this huge desire to make a cultural team to improve quality. People who are in testing and quality are really passionate about testing and quality. So that's awesome. I also find that leadership wants more visibility into your team's testing and quality. Usually they ask for a lot more metrics or at least something. They're like, we want to see some sort of understanding of where we're at with quality, and either at the team level or the organizational level. And then most people I know have a desire to have fun at work. There are some people who just like to come in, do their job and go home, but most of us, our experience is enhanced by having fun at work. So part of this, though, is if we look at the first one of a cultural change is hard. And it's hard because culture tends to be part of our identity. We identify as testers, and especially as our particular role. Some of us are front-end UI testers. That's what we love to do. Some of us are functional testers. Some of us test APIs. Some of us write automation. That's who we are. And so that can be really ingrained, and it just makes it very personal. Culture can also act like a control of sorts. I've been in medical device companies where there was very much a CYA kind of culture. I had to cover all of my tracks because the FDA auditor may come in at any time, and I have to be able to answer to the quality of my testing and the quality of the product. A lot of the habits that we have, cultural habits that we have, also kind of act as a control. So you look at some of the companies that have 40-page test documentation for their test strategy. And you're, well, why? Well, it's because that's the way it's always been done. It's the way we can control things, and it's a comfort. If I have that 40-page test strategy document, then it shows that I've been doing something and I have value, which is once again part of our identity. So you can kind of see how 3 of these all play together. And when you start saying, well, I want to make a cultural change, you're attacking those. And that can be just very difficult sometimes for people. So how do we get over that? How do we do a culture change? And well, have fun doing it. So really, games are an amazing tool when it comes to understanding how people and how teams think. They can really promote collaboration and give insight into why initiatives and transformations may not have worked in the past. They also give us the opportunity to play, because when you change the mindset and it's just a game, people tend to play and tend to see, well, I can try that at least because it's just a game. I can test it out, and then lo and behold, those changes spread, or they start having fun. And then it becomes, well, maybe I can do this on a more regular basis and not just with the game. So in order to get a better understanding, I'm going to dive into a little bit of game theory. So 2 common and readily studied game theories that give us really insight into human behavior and systems thinking are the Nash equilibrium and Pareto efficiency. I know that rolls right off the tongue for all of you guys, and I'm sure you're all experts in the Nash equilibrium and Pareto efficiency and how it drives socio-technical systems. I was not. And I will guarantee you that I'm going to explain it to you, but it still may be clear as mud by the time I'm done. Just bear with me. I will tie it all together. So looking at the Nash equilibrium. The Nash equilibrium is the set of strategies, one for each person, such that no one person has incentive to change their strategy given what other people are doing. So basically, no one person has anything to gain by changing their own strategy unilaterally. They just change it themselves. They have nothing to gain. And the Pareto efficiency is an allocation of resources in which it's impossible to make one individual better off without making at least one individual worse off. That's a little bit more, I find a little bit more understandable than the Nash equilibrium, but yeah. Yes, it's from A Beautiful Mind. I'll get to that. The way I like to think of Pareto efficiency, and the best way that resonated with me, is if you think about the example of you have a pie and there you have 3 friends. Now, the most optimal way, so Pareto optimal, would be to cut that pie into 3 pieces and each person would have a given piece. So that means I've allocated all the resources and nobody is worse off, but all of you are better off. There's also Pareto, kind of communism versus capitalism. There's also an example of if you have those, say, 3 people and you cut the pie in half and you give the pie to 2 people, that's still Pareto efficient because those 2 people are better off, but that 3rd person is no worse off. They're not starving or anything. They're no worse off than how they started. So there's Pareto optimal and efficiency, things like that. So nobody loses. It's just other people gain. Now, the best way to describe this is usually looking at something called the prisoner's dilemma. And I have a little video on that. And I should say, the interesting thing about the prisoner's dilemma is that all the options in this, as you watch through this, are Pareto optimal, except for this unique equilibrium, which is for both to defect. But we shall play, and that will make more sense. Can you hear my video before I stop? That's what I was afraid of. Oh no. All right, so we may take 2 seconds while I figure out, make sure I can play this video.
Hey, Janna, just as a person that's used Slack trying to play video before, they hide these little check boxes at the bottom that say include the computer audio and optimize for video display.
Optimize.
There's also share sound.
Share computer sound. Let's try that one. See if that works. That's why I paused it right away. So, and play.
Let's say Mr. Blue and Miss Red have each been arrested for some minor crime. The police think they committed a more serious crime, but they don't have enough evidence to convict them. They need a confession. They take them and put them in separate rooms so they can't talk, and play a little game. To try to force a confession, the police give them each a choice. Admit your partner committed the crime and you will go free. We'll pardon you for the minor crime, but your partner will have to spend 3 years in prison. If you stay silent and your partner lets us know that you were the one who really did it, then you're gonna have to go away for 3 years. They know that the police don't have any evidence, and if they both stay silent, then they will only go to prison 1 year each for the minor crime. If they both betray each other, then they'll both go to prison for 2 years each. Okay, each partner can do one of 2 things: stay silent or betray. Staying silent would be cooperating, and betraying would be defecting. If they both stay silent, then they each spend a year in prison. If one betrays and the other stays silent, then the betrayer goes free and the silent spends 3 years in prison. If they both betray, then it's 2 years each. So what are they going to do? Well, they should cooperate. That's the best option for the group, if we add the total number of years in prison. But let's take it from Red's perspective. If she thinks Blue is going to stay silent, then she should betray so she can go free. Going free is better than spending a year in prison. If she thinks he's going to betray her, then she should definitely betray. 2 years in jail is better than 3 and being made a fool of. Blue is in the exact same situation and will think the exact same thing. He should betray if she stays silent, and he should betray if she betrays. They should have both cooperated, but from an individual standpoint, they notice they could always gain by defecting, if they have no control over what the other person's gonna do. So they'll both defect to try to better their own situation, but come away not only hurting the group, but themselves. Individually, they're worse off than if they both cooperated.
All right, so can you hear me still? Okay, good. So that just kind of gives a little overview of the Nash equilibrium. So the Nash equilibrium in this is actually to defect effect. And that's because our natural human inclination is to think of ourselves first. So it's going to be, well, I have to assume I can't talk to him. So the worst thing that could happen is he would defect. So I better not stay silent. I have to protect myself. So I'd rather take 2 years than those 3 years. And the other guy is thinking the exact same thing. So then they both get 2 years. But the interesting thing is if they were to have just cooperated and realized when the police said, I don't have enough information to convict you, and stayed silent, then they would have gotten 1 year. So the fact that all the overall efficient outcomes are the ones that do not occur in equilibrium makes it a classic illustration of the dynamic between cooperation and competition. So if they were to cooperate, it'd be best for not only themselves but the team. But if they think of themselves individually, they can still get a Nash equilibrium where it's better as long as neither of them change their strategy. I know, it's clear as mud. But how does this reflect to me? So one of the features of Nash equilibrium in general is it does not correspond to the socially optimal outcome. That is, for a given game, it's possible for all players to improve their playoffs by collectively agreeing to choose, sorry, I'm looking at chats too. Yes, they both know that they don't have enough info, but that still doesn't mean that, to make ones better, if I said the other person did it, then I get nothing. Whereas even if I cooperated, I was gonna get 1 year. So in optimal to me would just be to defect. This is where it makes it a little interesting. But yeah. So that is, for a given game, it's possible for all the players to improve their situation by collectively agreeing to choose a strategy different from the Nash equilibrium. The reason for this is the player may choose to deviate upon the agreed upon cooperative strategy after a decision has been made to improve their individual payoff at the expense of group. Pareto inefficiency. So this is usually what I see in teams, that it's possible to make an individual better without making any individual worse off, but nobody will change their strategy. I'm sure a lot of us have been in that situation where we've been on teams and we know that there are ways to make things better, but people are afraid to take that first step. That is until someone changes the game. So somebody referenced A Beautiful Mind, and I think that's an actually even better understanding of the Nash equilibrium, and also how just sometimes you can, if you really takes a group of people, because what this is really saying is that you have to have everybody change simultaneously. So let's take a look at that. Let's make sure that the audio is playing.
Incoming, gentlemen.
Deep breaths. Nash, you might want to stop shuffling your papers for 5 seconds.
I will not buy you gentlemen beer.
Oh, we're not here for beer, my friend.
Oh. Does anyone else feel she should be moving in slow motion?
Will she want a large wedding, you think?
Should we say swords, gentlemen? Pistols at dawn?
Have you remembered nothing? Recall the lessons of Adam Smith, the father of modern economics.
In competition, individual ambition serves the common good.
Exactly.
Every man for himself, gentlemen.
Yeah, and those who strike out are stuck with their friends.
I'm not going to strike out.
You can lead a blonde to water, but you can't make her drink.
I don't think you said that.
All right, nobody move. She's looking over here. Right, she's looking at Nash.
Oh, God. All right, he may have the upper hand now, but wait until he opens his mouth. Remember the last time?
Oh, yes, that was one of the history books.
Adam Smith needs revision.
What are you talking about?
If we all go for the blonde, we block each other. Not a single one of us is going to get her. So then we go for her friends. But but they will all give us the cold shoulder because nobody likes to be second choice. But what if no one goes for the blonde? We don't get in each other's way, and we don't insult the other girls. That's the only way we win. That's the only way we all get laid. Adam Smith said, the best result comes from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself, right? That's what he said, that's right? Incomplete. Incomplete. Okay? Because the best result would come from everyone in the group doing what's best for himself and the group.
Ash, this is some way for you to get the blonde on your own. You can go to hell.
Governing dynamics, gentlemen. Governing dynamics. Adam Smith. Who's wrong?
Yep, there we go. Careful, careful.
Thank you.
All right, so in this clip, we can see that the overall objective for each individual doesn't change. They all want to get dates. We'll just leave it at that. However, in order for everyone to be successful, they have to change their individual strategies for the greater good of the team. They can't all go for the blonde. If they all go for the blonde, they block each other. But if they don't, they all go for her friends, then everybody gets a date and everybody is happy. Well, maybe except for the blonde. So what does that mean for us on teams? It means you need to have all the players change their strategies simultaneously. What I found in a lot of transformations that fail, or a lot of initiatives that fail, is you have one person changing. A lot of times, coming from a testing perspective, it's, okay, now I want to add a new metric to my testing. I want to increase code coverage, or I want to do more testing, or this type of testing. And we do it in isolation without talking to our BAs or our devs. And so we start actually pitting ourselves against each other. And leadership does this a lot, because a lot of times those initiatives will come from top down, and they'll tell the developers, well, I need you to push out features faster. And they'll tell the testers that we need to have better code quality. And they've actually set it up to pit the two teams against each other, because all these developers are cranking out code. All they care about, they're incentivized to create code and getting the pressure to create all this code, but they're sacrificing quality. And now testers are being penalized because they're finding more issues are slipping out because they're trying to keep up with everything. So what you have to do is you have to look at, how do we change everybody's mentality simultaneously for the greater good. So that's where us as testers, many of us call ourselves quality advocates, but we really don't have the authority over scope, budget, resources, etc. So we need to find a way to influence people and get the cultural change we desire. And this is where we need to use game theory and change the game to change the culture. So let's look a little bit at what's a game. So I'm sure we've all played games, whether it's a video game, a board game, a logic puzzle, anything like that. So it's really kind of any form of play. There are different components to a game. There's always some sort of rules, challenges, interactivities. And we also want to make sure, yep.
I think there's a question from Trisha.
Can I see questions?
Can I see, Trisha, it looks like you've raised your hand. What's up? Nope, she says nope. Never mind, sorry. Carry on.
She's just waving at people. It's all good. And we can't forget the people in the game, because people are important, especially when it comes to culture and games. And this is where I like to say, this is where I got the idea of mod in the title, because as testers, we kind of have to modify our role to really think of games and being a game master. But let's start at looking at some rules and goals. So when I first started thinking how I can apply games and games theory to changing behavior, I needed some rules of the game. And I looked at different places like Google's test certification program. So Test Certified was comprised originally of 3 levels, eventually 5, which were then comprised of smaller tasks. And some of those tasks could be completed really rapidly, while others took more time and commitment. As one may expect, the levels took progressively more and more time and effort to reach the next. And then I also looked at TMMI, a nonprofit organization which supports organizations around the world to improve their software and system testing to achieve higher and sustainable levels of product quality for the systems they're developing. They also have a 5-level system. So of course, this got me thinking, I need a 5-level system. This is also where it ties into. So here's a sneak preview of what I'm rolling out at Ultimate. And I'm gonna read the quality levels just because I absolutely love reading through these titles. It's one of my favorite things to do. So all teams start at a level 1, which is your Frogger level. Because if you've ever played Frogger, you're hopping across the street and you are just trying to survive. Level 2, Duck Hunt. It's where, as a team, you're starting to pick off things, but the dog is still laughing at you. If you've ever played a Duck Hunt, you'll notice that you shoot the little ducks and then the dog still laughs if you miss one. Mortal Kombat, you're kicking butt, but only in one-on-one battles. Resident Evil, you're starting to defend against a horde of zombies coming at you. And finally, League of Legends, where you're all working together as a team of quality legends. Okay, how awesome is that to relate it to testing? Because you can totally see how you can slowly improve your quality. Also, I take pride in the fact that they're chronological. So Frogger was released first, then Duck Hunt, yada, yada, yada. So it was kind of fun. You'll notice that I have 4 badges next to each one of them. So what I did is I was dealing with a culture where testing quality equals testing. And the more testing that you have, the better quality you're gonna have, right? And so I'm trying to not only improve quality, but change the mentality that quality is so much more than just testing. So I do have a testing badge, but then I also have a performance badge, a development practices badge, and a user experience badge. And each one of those components has 3 to 5 quality missions. So when you complete a quality mission, you get a badge. And when you get all 4 badges, you get a level up. What I like about this is it's a game, it's fun, it's whimsical. It allows me to push different initiatives, get people cooperating. I also have a leaderboard. So it looks like a, video game leaderboard where leadership can get insight into where their team is with their quality. Are they a level 1? Are they really doing great in testing? They got their testing badge right away. But they're struggling for the other 3 badges. Now that was the other thing that teams didn't like, but I eventually convinced them it was the way to go, was they were like, well, can I get a level 5 testing while I'm still at a level 1 frog in performance? And I said, absolutely not. You have to get all 4. You have to look at that holistic version of quality. If you're rocking it in that first testing frog, you got your testing done, well, that's a great opportunity for maybe you to help another team that's struggling to get their testing frog. Maybe that means you've got your testing going, your great processes, but now the team needs to rally around performance. So some people have for my developers, I say it's like a WIP limit. It's a work in progress limit. So if we got 1, then we have to all rally around to get the rest. And I actually incentivize people to go. And I said, the good news is if you think you're at a level 5 quality, then as soon as you level up to level 2, you've got that frog right away. So you don't have to wait and go through and prove everything. It's just you're not allowed to go to the next step until you've completed all your missions. So you gotta tackle all the bosses before you win the game. So let's talk about people. And this is where I want to talk about game master. So a game master is a person who acts as an organizer, officiant regarding rules, arbitration, moderator for usually a multiplayer role-playing game. I think of dungeon masters for Dungeons and Dragons when I think of game masters. So and this is where I say testers need to really act as game masters, organizing and officiating the rules. My recommendation is to try and create game rules that are easily automated. So you can collect, feedback metrics and things like that. There's less for you to manually go between. It all depends on how large of a scope. If it's within your team, you can think of practices and processes, those missions, because you got to have somebody that validates that it actually was completed. So you can have a person go through and do that. But if you're looking at a wider organizational change, you may have to really evaluate how much time is it going to be to, give each team their badge and, make those checks. So have the game master really be responsible for reporting on the team's progress. Yes, it can be gamified. Yes, they can cheat, but trust goes a long way in cultural changes. So what I do is I take somebody from the team itself and have them be a game master. Once again, yeah, they can cheat to make their team look better, but in the long run, it's really not going to help them out because people are going to call it really fast. Also, when you do that, you're saying, I'm trusting you to do the right thing. And like I said, trust goes a long way. Game masters also need to be coaches and mentors. They need to help everybody. They need to help and guide their team. So they're going to be the ones that are going to be coaching developers on how to get the testing badge. I have one of my things is you have to have a test automation strategy, so that I need to work with my BAs, I need to work with my developers, I need to be working with everybody. And it's really kind of up to you and your organization on whether you have, what the rules and what the processes are. For us, we decided we wanted one of our levels to be, one of our game testing missions to be code coverage. So we wanted, you have 0% code coverage at level 1, 10%, and then we just went up the level check. That was 1 of 5. It's not my favorite metric, but that's what the company wanted, so I went with that. Things like that. The one I did was product coverage. I want to see a growing product coverage map. So how many test cases do you have covering this? How many test cases do you have covering this? And what's your risk assessment on all of those? So yeah, you really have to work with everybody. We have performance requirements. We actually even have containerization requirements as part of our development practices. And that's a way to get everybody involved in the game. It doesn't just have to be testing. It should be everybody, and everybody's responsible for it, but it's up to the game master to really shepherd that. So this is where I say, so now you have some ideas of game theory and how games can help you change a culture by simultaneously changing everybody's strategy. You have a possible set of rules from Google or from TMMI. You have an idea on what a game master is, so you're good to go, right? But wait, it's a trap. That's a trick question. And so I want to go over some common pitfalls that you're going to want to avoid. Now, when Google did their test certified program, which is relatively similar to this, they had test mercenaries. And the test mercenaries were really kind of like the game masters to their test certified program. However, it ultimately was not as successful as they had hoped it to be, mostly because what they did is they sent 2 mercenaries from their test certified program to embed in the team to teach the team how to level up their test certification. So they would swoop in, train the team, and then leave. And what they found was that many teams would go back to their old ways after the mercenaries left. So in order to understand this part of human behavior, you have to look at extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. Another big pitfall that people tend to have with initiatives is they give out swag or prizes to one, and once you reach that, you've gotten your swag, you're good to go. You've given me a set of rules I don't really care about. You've given me some sort of extrinsic motivation, which is either a incentive to reward or to avoid a punishment. A lot of times we set up quality rules that, oh, if you don't have 80% code coverage, then you can't, your build's going to break. And there's that fear there. So many initiatives fail because they simply offer those extrinsic motivations in the form of swag, bonuses, special treatment, or retribution. So, and studies have really shown that extrinsic motivation drives rapid, short-lived change, that once the reward is received, people revert back to their former state. Interestingly enough, many times they actually even revert worse to when they've started from. So we've had, I've had a situation where, you know, team has asked for help. Somebody's gone in, swooped in and said, oh, well, we don't like the test automation framework you're using. We want to go to a unified framework. So we're going to start by helping you migrate to this new framework by writing every new feature in this new framework for you. And we'll train you how to write in this new framework. Well, they were Python developers, and the common framework that they were trying to impose on teams was Java. So they were trying to convince Java programmers to start writing in JUnit and writing in Java. And it just didn't make sense. They didn't really learn. And there was that rapid short-lived change. And now when they pulled out, they have two test suites to maintain, one in Java and one in Python. And they ended up just trashing everything about 6 months worth of work because they're like, it just didn't make sense to me. Whereas we're going to look at, if you look at intrinsic motivation, that tends to bring on long-term change. So intrinsic motivation involves doing something because it's personally rewarding to you. It's something that you're passionate about. And when people are passionate about a cause and they've truly bought into the cause, they're more likely to take it to heart and to change permanently. However, there's a flip side to this too, because only intrinsic motivation can lead to things never really getting off the ground because no one is pushed to make a change, or it can lead to sometimes having that single ivory tower that thinks they know better than everybody else because they're very passionate about it. And so that's a pitfall to kind of avoid, is looking at how are you motivating people? How are you creating these rules? How are you being as a game master? Are you being a coach and a mentor, or are you being a dictator in an ivory tower? And the other thing you have to be aware of is it has to be a competition and not a comparison. If you notice, I haven't talked a lot about getting leadership buy-in. I've said visibility to leadership. You don't have to get a whole lot of leadership buy-in to do this, but it's good to have them on board, and it's good to set the rules that you can't pit teams against, you can't compare one team to another. You can't be giving, you can be a competition, a healthy competition, but if you have one team that starts saying, or one person that starts saying, I'm going to do all the initiatives myself, and because the rest of you just aren't good at it, and I'm obviously going to save the day, it's not a fun game. But if you get a little healthy competition saying, well, I'm at a level 1, testing, or I'm at a level 2 testing, and you're only at a level 1, well, let's help each other. Let's compete a little bit. Let's see who can get there first, but make it healthy. Use it as a good sparring partner, and not necessarily somebody who kind of keeps knocking you down, but makes you feel better about yourself and keeps building it up, and not I'm going to beat you, I'm better than you. And there's a great little clip too on competition versus comparison to kind of further explain that better than I can.
The word compete, here's where it comes from. Competere, and it means to strive together, to look at competition as a partnership. Now I'm going to ask you a question. How would you answer this? When would you run faster? By yourself or with someone else? With someone else, right? I talked to a lot of athletes, and they pick this one. Why? Competition, many different reasons, right? But what does this show us? That we need other people to push us to a level that we could not get to on our own, right? So I want to show you an example of another philosopher, little Kanye West action, okay? Now, What's interesting is Kanye is oftentimes compared to Drake, so he's going to talk about how he views Drake, but also how he views competition.
So how do we avoid the trap? We avoid the trap by selecting a team member to be your game master. I also recommend creating a game league where all the game masters meet and discuss lessons learned. So you can do this across multiple teams and then have this game league so you can learn from each other, get feedback from each other. Are the levels working out? Do we need to adjust them? Since it's a game and it's something that you're creating and you're doing together, it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to stay the same. Iterate. It's okay to break it up into smaller chunks or have different game levels. Right now, at one company, I focused purely on the testing and I called it testing trials. At Ultimate, we don't have a game league, but we do have a testing guild where we share our successes and our failures to build each other up. And that's really what it's about. It's building each other up. A great example of this is we were struggling to have teams, we were struggling with the build staying green. And so what we did is every time your build turned red, there was on our daily progress board, your team got a poop emoji next to their face, next to their team name. And nobody wants to be the poop emoji. So what we found is just by simply putting that poop emoji, making it a game, like how long can you keep it from having the poop emoji show up? Teams got energized to work, to compete against other teams and against themselves to improve their builds. Once again, you can gamify that. As we all know, you just turn off all the tests. Done, green build. You have to have some trust, things like that. And that's where game masters can come in and they can coach and say, no, let's not turn off all the tests, but let's think about how to do this better. The big thing though is, and this is why I didn't show my specific rules for Ultimate, because a little bit of Ultimate proprietary there. Also, I have to make sure that you all know that we are 100% perfect in everything that we do. So of course, we don't need rules. But one of the big things is create rules based on feedback and insights from teams. So what I like to do is ask teams, how are you doing what you're doing? Why are you doing what you're doing? What does quality mean to you? What are 3 things that would make your life easier? Now, I asked specifically for 3 things because if I asked for 1, everybody will give me 1 of 2 answers. It's a 50-50 split between more time and more people. So if I ask for 3, that gives me more time, more people, and really something else that would help make their life easier. And then what metrics do you use? And it's not necessarily because I think those are the best metrics in the world, but I want to know what metrics they use because that will also give me insight into what they think quality means if they can't put it into words. And it gives me insight into what I might be able to automate already. How do I make it easy for myself? And then the big thing is use both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation. So that's by creating the rules based on feedback, you find out what people are passionate about, and then you use extrinsic. So for me, it's squirting frogs, little rubber squirting frogs. Everybody on the team gets a rubber squirting frog. They're like a nickel to buy online, and it makes people happy because they have a little thing. For the duck hunt, everybody gets rubber duckies. For Mortal Kombat, there are squeaking dragons. So little rubber squeaking dragons. For the Resident Evil, it's little stress balls where you squeeze it and the zombie eyes pop out. And then for League of Legends, everybody gets a sword. Hello. So you can make it fun. And that's the most important thing, really, is to have fun. Because at the end of the day, if you're having fun and you mod up your role, what people have found is that provided a skilled team of facilitators handles the game, so a game master, a tester, somebody skilled in quality handles the game, few other approaches to teaching can really match the immersive quality of playing games. So learn, have fun, all sorts of great things. Most importantly, I need to say thank you. So I had these ideas, and really I kind of took this in reverse. I had the idea for the quality levels, and I was really kind of excited about, well, why were these working? So using all this information that I gained from all these references is really how I put together for systems thinking and game theory. And then another great thing that I like to bring up is the Wicked Games, using games to resolve environmental conflicts, that YouTube. It is a fabulous watch, and you can actually see how using a game saved trees and resources and really changed an entire culture. So this is not just something I'm making up in my head. This has gone down, worked for me not only in testing, but everywhere. And with that, I want to see if there's any more questions. I've kind of tried to answer some of the questions along the ways, but I will scroll up in the chat and see if there are additional questions. Does the game apply to only test, or can it apply to all members of an agile team? It should apply to all members of an agile team. That's kind of the point of trying to change all behaviors simultaneously. So everybody should be working towards this level. The whole team should be working towards getting the different levels. Trying to see. Chance will be given to all one by one to be the master. You can rotate masters if you want to. It's really learning about what works for your team, things like that. How can you create games in a small startup with only 2 real dev teams? Most games that I know take at least 2 players, but you can also do this within your own team itself. If you want to drive quality, set some goals for your team, and then have the team work together to figure out, how do we meet those goals? How do we play the game together? What does this look like? Figure out what's important to your team as you're working through here. And you can have the 2 teams compete against each other. You can have one team, if you're really close, you can have just general ideas, industry ideas that may help, and do it you can do it as broad or specific as you want. What I tend to avoid, though, are things like, you have to use this specific test tool, and this specific test tool to this varying degrees to level up through there, unless you have a very standardized set of tools, and that makes sense. Most companies that I know aren't really at that level. So I tend to focus on processes and things to improve quality in general. Containerization. I'm not going to tell you to use Docker, but I'm going to tell you to containerize. So if you can figure out a different way to containerize, then great. But the easiest way of doing it is Docker. So I typically set up my rules so teams don't feel like they're being dictated to go down a certain direction. I'm saying you can do it whatever which way you like. Test strategy is a big one for us. So like I said, feature coverage is one of the things that I would look at for levels in a lot of these industries. And we have a test management tool. We use TestRail, and you can easily break that into features and have that report out your feature coverage, get feature maps from that. But there's some teams that are like, I'm not ready, I'm not comfortable to take on TestRail. So they may do it in Excel spreadsheets. If that's what works for them, great. At least they're tracking it. That's step 1. Then maybe the next iteration of this is, okay, now let's figure out how you get that spreadsheet into TestRail to get that easier. It's easier if you would have done this into TestRail, but if you really want to go another route, I'm not going to stop you, and that'll still allow you to level, and it still gives me a better insight into your testing story and how you're doing things. So, any other questions?
Back on that slide where you had Frogger, the 4 colors were differentiating which ones were test, which ones were performance, which ones, okay.
Let me go back.
And you were saying to achieve all across the board before you attempt the next level.
Yep.
And help each other get across the board before you
Yep. So the green Frogger, the green is testing, the orange is performance, the purple is development practices, and the blue is user experience. So what we did is we have teams that don't even have, like, they don't understand how to even set performance standards and requirements. So it's not necessarily even performance testing. It's like, do you even know what the performance requirements are for your thing? And so let's build those up. Okay. While you do, so that's maybe one mission, a part of performance. The other thing is, okay, we have a performance testing tool. How far along are you with that performance testing tool? So that'd be mission. I'll use a previous company. For a previous company, what we did for the testing portion of it is, one was code coverage. You had, the levels were like 0, 10, 20, 40, 80, something like that. Then it was product coverage map. You had to do a feature map. So the first one was, at least identify 4 features and map them out somehow, either in mind map or in test rail, organize them, or a document. I didn't really care how you do it. Then the next level was, okay, you have to incrementally do, 3 more features as you go in there. And it actually got the teams into just the behavior of adding features. So now, even after the game stopped or they reached level 5, they had these built-in processes that they were adding on and doing that and looking at how to do that. I have, as one of these, was determine all your non-deterministic tests. For your automation, where's your flaky automation? By level 5, not only should you have removed all non-deterministic tests, but you're spending at least 10% of your time innovating on your automation, either figuring out new tools to use or new ways of doing things. And that's something you can't measure, I would say, with an automated system. That's where you have to rely on your game masters to say, yep, as a team, we're spending 10% of our time trying to figure out how to be better testers. It's a trust factor, and that's okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's a couple more questions in chat, and I'm super curious about one. What time frame does it take to get from one level to the next?
It really depends on the team. I've had teams that excelled from level 1 to level 2 in a week. I've had teams that it took over a month for them to get from level 1 to level 2. It depends on how strict you want to send it and how high you want to do it. I am currently working with Ultimate on another rendition of this, because my goals of what level 5 are, they're like, that would take us 5 years just from a technology and infrastructure way. And I'm like, so we're at least working towards something. So it really kind of depends. It also depends on, that's why I say create your own rules. You have to create your own for the situation in front of you. If you have teams with short attention spans, don't make it very hard to get to level 5, or, make level 1 super easy. I made level 1 so everybody should pretty much be able to get level 1 starting out of the gate. Level 2 may take a couple more days. Level 3 will take maybe a week. Level 4 may take a month, and level 5 may take 3 to 6 months. But if you stretch it out too long, then people lose interest. Have you ever used individual badges versus team competitions for new skills learned? I haven't yet. That's something I've played around with. I've been thinking about, but I haven't gotten there yet. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody.